getting the handle out of fading this out. I feel it almost worked. Hey, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream. Yeah, it's a weird evening for me to record a podcast. I do realize that, but that's the way it is. It's touch and go at the moment. I'll do stuff whenever I can, and so we'll do a podcast today. I'm probably gonna do another one tomorrow, because I kind of have to precede the program, so to speak. Cheers, by the way. Oh, Galtaran, thanks for subscribing. I see the alerts are working. We have new. Wait. I do have new. The stream has new things. I can't see that here. I have to. We have new sub badges, but I've designed a few new sub badges, but I haven't included all of them yet. I'm getting some professional designed emotes from Pewee. She's working on it, or she hasn't started work on it yet, but she's got a lot on her hands. So, who is a German streamer who is an illustrator who's really, really good. She's done emotes for like some really amazing, well-known German Twitch people. So I'm very happy. I'm getting an avatar and some emotes done by her. Cheers, by the way. Yeah, so I'm gonna do one today, podcast recording today and probably tomorrow, because I'll be in Hanover next week for a few days to host a stage at a conference there, security conference by Heise once again, and probably won't be able to record a podcast. Now today, the podcast is this is going to be controversial again. This is kind of a response to last week's episode. So basically, I did an episode on a paper by Anthony Fauci, which I knew was going to be controversial, and I posted it on LinkedIn, and it got deleted off LinkedIn. And I think that's very interesting for various reasons. So I want to concentrate an episode on that, and then tomorrow we're gonna do a dedicated episode. I've got so many topics on the docket. Like my whole fucking journal is full of this crap that I'm trying to get to. I think the next one I have to do tomorrow is probably going to be Seymour Hersh and Nord Stream. But there's just topics everywhere. Yeah, Galtaran, you should have like one of the top sub badges, but you don't, because I haven't included them yet. But they're coming, so you'll get a sub badge at some point. Once I have designed them all in Inkscape. Actually, I can probably show you. Oh God, I might be able to. If Inkscape Inkscape is indeed being silly as always. Where are we? Where are we at? Now I need to put that on screen. So so I got some. I kind of modeled them after, army ranks in the Imperial Guard. So we got trooper. We got corporal, we got specialist, we got sergeant, warrant officer, lieutenant, commander or tank commander, captain, commissar, I think major, colonel, what is I forgot what this is. This is oh God, that's general. Yeah, somehow we're gonna get up to I think that's War Master. So you'll be up there somewhere with your 33 months. I'm working this out. This is Fab digging his grave deeper. Probably, I don't fucking care about LinkedIn. This is like a personal episode again. It's kind of like the one on YouTube when they deleted that episode. It's kind of self-indulgent. I realize that. I'm going to talk about that on the episode, but I think it also needs. You need to talk about these things. I think this happens a lot to a lot of people, and a lot of people who do like journalism and create content, and it has kind of this chilling effect. And if people don't talk about it, I think it just gets worse. So I'm just going to talk about it. It's free content. Might as well. Anyway, let's get this show on the road, shall we? I had a button for this. Where's is that? Oh, that's the button. Yeah, let's get this started, shall we? Let's do a little test recording. 1, 2, 3. Hello. 1, 2, testing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I'm using the same VST plugins on. I tweaked a little bit on my podcast setting. Like on the way I'm mixing everything, so this should be the same settings to what you're actually hearing on stream on my microphone. So I put the VST plugins into OBS as well, and I've kind of aligned them so they should be the same setting. They should sound similar. Let's do a little test recording. 1, 2, 3. Hello. I have to pull this down after the. Probably have to do that. Recording 1, 2, 3. Hello. 1, 2, testing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I'll fix that. Like I'll have to tweak that in post. My voice is very loud and compressed now compared to the music, so I'll probably have to bump the music up. Especially the intro music for the show isn't very compressed. I kind of like it that way, but yeah, probably turn that up. 1, 2, 1, 2. I can probably go to 100 now. Turn it up to 11. Wasn't that changing anything? Oh, it is actually. Okay. What's that sound like? Wasn't that changing anything? Oh, it is actually. Okay. Yeah, I'll fix the rest in post. Let's get the show on the road. All right. Here we go. You know the drill. I'm gonna react to comments in chat, but not like not like on a gaming stream, because podcasting and all that. Otherwise, it's gonna be unlistenable for the main audience, and that's definitely not what we want. So let's get this. Let's do this. Let's do this. You're listening to The Private Citizen, a podcast that aims to misbehave. This is episode 147 for Saturday, the 11th of March, 2023. LinkedIn says Fauci is spreading misinformation. Hello, everybody. My name is Fab. Welcome to the show. Thanks for listening. I'm coming to you live from the... I almost said beautiful city of Düsseldorf in Germany. Wouldn't go that far. It's okay. It's not as nice as Hamburg, even with the bullets flying. If you haven't heard, there was like a shooting in Hamburg, which incidentally happened just around the corner where this podcast used to be recorded in Alsterdorf, very close by, just along my usual running kind of track that I when I went jogging in the evening. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Welcome to the show. My name is Fab. We're going to talk about the last episode, or rather how the previous episode was received. So bear with me. This is going to be a little bit self-indulgent, I feel. It has a little bit of that aspect to it, but I do feel it's an important topic. So basically, before we get into the show, I'm just thinking, is there any housekeeping? Yeah, probably. I'm probably putting out this episode today, and then there'll be another episode. Saturday is kind of a weird time to release a podcast for me, but things have been very just touch and go. I've had a lot of work and a lot of things to do, so I'm trying to get shows out whenever I can. And so it's just happening to be Saturday today. And I'll probably record one tomorrow on Sunday and then probably put it out on Monday, because I won't have time to record any podcasts next week, as I will be in Hanover for several days for an IT security conference, where I'm actually running one of the stages. It's the SEC IT conference. I did that last year as well. So that's going to be fun, but I won't be podcasting from the hotel room probably. So I'm going to put that one out. We'll see. I've got so many topics I need to get to. It's just piling up. And of course, this episode today is part of the problem, but I think, I kind of think it's important, and I want you to get that out of the way first. It's probably going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, because I just don't want to go on and on and on about the topic, because it's already very self-indulgent. But yeah, just settle in with me, grab your favorite beverage. It's the evening here. I just cooked a lovely dinner, so I'm having some pre-post. Why am I doing a podcast? I can't talk. Having some post-dinner beers. I don't know what time it is when you listen to it. You might be in a car, so I wouldn't recommend beers, but hopefully you can settle back. You can have a beverage of your choice, maybe some lovely coffee, and yeah, let's talk about what we actually want to talk about here today. So today I want to talk about the previous episode and how that was received. But before we get into that, maybe I should very quickly recap what I talked about, last week, because otherwise, it would make sense for you to listen to the previous episode, but maybe you can't right now. So let's just, and maybe you haven't, maybe you're new to the show. So in the interest of fairness, I'm just going to recap what I talked about last week. Now, if you want to follow along, you can go to privatecitizen.press, privatecitizen.press, which is the website for this podcast. Yes, the top-level domain is .press, which should be a hint for people who are, checking out links. I'm posting somewhere. Just, that's... Yeah. We'll talk about that in a bit. Anyway, so yeah, you can follow along there. I've got links, everything in the show notes as usual. So last week, maybe I'm gonna go back a little bit further, like I did last week. When the pandemic started, I said from the beginning that vaccines are good and they work, and I always said they work. If you're a doctor, I always think you should leave a decision like this up to your doctor or to yourself if you want to decide it yourself. But preferably to a doctor. If they think you should be vaccinated against the disease, that is great, and you should do that. But I always said that's for the reason that that's for you to protect yourself. And there was this, what I thought, misguided belief when the pandemic started, that getting vaccinated would somehow protect other people. I mean, it does to a very, very, around many corners. It kind of does, because it might prevent you from, when you get a disease like SARS-CoV-2, you get infected with SARS-CoV-2, it might prevent you from getting sick very seriously and having to end up in hospital and in ICU. And then if you because you're vaccinated, if that doesn't happen, you kind of keep hospital beds open for people who need them. So that kind of does, around several corners, protects other people. But that's like very far-fetched. Generally, I've been always of the belief that the vaccination is for you to protect yourself, which I always thought was common sense. Until the pandemic came around, everybody's like, no, we need to get people vaccinated to protect them for themselves and to protect other people. And I always said that is bullshit. Now, last week, I did an episode where I thought, I'm kind of vindicated, because Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is who used to be the head of the NIAID, the National Institute for Allergies and Infectious Diseases. I remember what it stands for now, which is part of the NIH, the National Institutes of Health in the US. So like the foremost government agency that deals with infectious diseases. And for a long time, the advisor to the president, the chief medical advisor to the president, both to Trump and Biden, Presidents Trump and Biden, published a paper that he wrote with some colleagues, which is kind of a review of the scientific consensus on vaccines. And this is in Cell, Host, and Microbe, which is a very respected medical paper, which has a pretty high impact factor. And, the guy is an eminent expert in the field, who is reviewing the current scientific consensus. So you'd be like, oh, well, this is something you should listen to. And in this paper, he says that we have known for a long time, and we're talking the 60s roughly, that for respiratory diseases like influenza, the vaccines that we have several problems. They don't, they only protect to a certain degree. And most importantly, they don't do anything to hamper or curtail the spread of the disease, right? They protect you from getting seriously ill should you get the virus, but in a function that I went into in that episode, which was episode 146, which I'm not going into detail now, but I went into detail there from the paper, some very interesting ways of how the immune system works, and how our upper respiratory tract has very different immune system than the lower ones. And then the lower one basically means that if you're vaccinated, you do get influenza, you still spread it to other people, which is a problem and has always been a problem with influenza and influenza vaccines that we've known about for decades. Now it's become more serious with SARS-CoV-2 because SARS-CoV-2 is a lot more infectious. And so basically, Fauci doesn't really clearly say that in this paper, but you can, if you read the paper, you can basically draw the understanding. And what he says is, when the pandemic started, we had the hope that, vaccinating the majority of the population would do something to curtail the spread of the disease. And he kind of says, we shouldn't really have hoped that, based on, if you look at influenza, it's a very different virus than SARS. But the way our immune system deals with these viruses is very similar. And so we should have seen it coming that we'd have the same, in air quote, problems with the vaccine. I personally, thinking about this, and I've thought about this a bit more since last week, I don't think it's a problem with the vaccine. I think it's the vaccine does what it does. It primes the immune system. I think it's a problem with the expectation that people had towards the vaccine. So they had they had expectations, the general public and lots of the professionals, including, I think, Fauci, which is kind of why he kind of says we fucked up in this paper. They had expectations that this vaccine would deal differently with SARS-CoV-2 than the influenza vaccine deals with influenza. Which is kind of, that's the problem. We shouldn't have had that expectation. And so he kind of says, these vaccines really aren't as good as they should be. And his kind of bottom line in this paper is that we need better vaccines, right? And he's kind of old, he's retired now, and kind of the takeaway is like, I'm out, right? I'm gone. Mistakes were made, but as a scientific community, we're kind of happy that there's new people with new ideas. The mRNA vaccines were a new idea, but they, turned out to have the same problems. And kind of, I think what he says, if you read the whole paper, the takeaway is the mRNA vaccines, for example, were a very new, ingenious way of making a vaccine, but they do the same thing. The problem is not in the vaccine. The vaccine primes the immune system to attack the virus. The issue we have here is that our immune system deals with these viruses in a certain way. And the problems we have are because of that. And we kind of need to solve that somehow, I guess. I don't know how. That's not the goal of the paper. The goal of the paper is to review what we know and what we've known for a long time and to put it into light with our experiences in the pandemic. And I think it's very laudable, especially for somebody. I mean, it's kind of like self-serving in a bit for somebody like Fauci, who's kind of, maybe shaped public policy in a way that, as this paper would suggest, doesn't gel with the scientific understanding. But, it's kind of, maybe he wants to kind of clean his name afterwards. But also, you could see it that way, but you could also see it as laudable as somebody who says, we made mistakes. And as a scientist, it's important to also, talk about the mistakes and, give people kind of a platform to build on, like the new generation, scientists, a platform to build on what they should do next. Like, he basically says the way we address this health crisis, which with vaccines here, was very suboptimal. And, we need something new. Now, it's important to also draw conclusions from that. Like, one of the conclusions that I drew from that is that something like a vaccine passport, which we, largely implemented in chances are, if you're listening to this, the country you're in implemented some kind of vaccine passport, are kind of null and void. These are public policies that we should immediately get rid of because, the underlying idea, the vaccine passports work like you have a document that proves that you were vaccinated, and then you can do certain things. Like you can go do it in the public. Maybe you remember this. We did this a few years ago. Now, this only makes sense if you labor under the assumption that being vaccinated does something for the public instead of just for you. And that's always why I, from the beginning, was against these kind of measures and talked about this on the show. And if you see what they say in this paper, then you'd have to come to the conclusion that with the vaccines that we have right now, this kind of approach doesn't make sense. It makes sense for people to get vaccinated, to protect themselves. It just doesn't make sense to have societal barriers and policies and ways of doing things where we go like, you have to be vaccinated to do certain things. It's just, that's something I think we need to learn from this. It's not something this paper says, but I think it's a valid conclusion. Now, why am I talking about this again? I talked about this last episode. You're probably bored out of your skull. I released the episode, and as I usually do, I post about it on social networks. And I did so on Twitter, I did so on Facebook, I did so on the Fediverse, on a Mastodon instance, to be more specific. And I did so on LinkedIn. And then I very quickly get an email from LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn belongs to Microsoft, right? LinkedIn's been bought by Microsoft a few years ago. It's if you're not aware, which I think I find hard to believe, but you might not be. It's like a professional social network, right? It's for job stuff. It's like for people to network at work. It's very professional. It's very geared at professionals. On my LinkedIn advertised, you can see I put some screenshots of the emails and stuff I received in the show notes. Private citizen, not press. You can see I wear a suit and a tie because it's very professional. Now, LinkedIn informed me that they had deleted my post because, quote, it doesn't comply with LinkedIn's policies, and it was in fact labeled as, quote, misinformation. Right. Let's just take that as it is. I said, oh, well, that's interesting. And there was a button that said you can request for somebody to take, quote, a second look. So I assumed, okay, look, this is what happens. They have, like every social network right now, they have machine learning algorithms, running around reading every post. Because, I mean, let's face it, there are so many posts on these networks. They're like, thousands of posts a second. No human can look through those, right? So if you kind of want to filter them and you are required by law, there's another topic, but kind of want to filter, you have to have algorithms, and they're probably machine learning algorithms. And my actual post there was kind of controversial. I've saying that I've been skeptical from the beginning of the pandemic of vaccines because they don't stop the spread. And I said, that's what scientific data tells us now. Here we have basically Fauci telling us that that's right. And here's the link. Now, I was like, okay, so some machine learning algorithm probably went vaccine, noticed that this is kind of critical and flagged it up and deleted it, because you can just do that to people. Why not? Right? Just delete the shit. So I thought, okay, let's, like happened to an episode of mine previously when it got deleted of YouTube. By the way, an episode where I also talked about vaccines, where there was an episode on a completely different topic, but in the beginning of the episode, I explained why I wasn't able to record an episode at my usual release date. Back then I was going for Wednesday releases. I don't do that right now, but I'm going to probably get back to that at some point. But anyway, I was basically explaining why I couldn't release a show on Wednesday because I had gotten a SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, a vaccination, and I explained that it completely laid me flat for like 3 or 4 days. And I explained all my symptoms. And then YouTube said, well, that's medical misinformation that goes against the WHO guidelines. And with YouTube, you can actually write them a little bit, right? So I said, I dispute this. This is a scientific podcast, a journalistic podcast. It's on a different matter at all. And when I was talking about vaccines, I was talking about my personal experience of getting the vaccine. Now, how can that can't possibly contradict WHO guidelines, because I wasn't talking about I was talking about my personal experience. How can that be against WHO guidelines? Now, to YouTube's credit, they restored that episode. And I thought the same would happen here. With LinkedIn, I thought, okay, I clicked that button. Sadly, I can't write them a message. Otherwise, like YouTube would have said, I'm a journalist. This is a journalistic product, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't do that. Now I was like, the humans gonna look over this and they're gonna see, this was a mistake, and they're gonna reinstate the post. Else will see in Twitch that I'm broadcasting this episode live on Twitch as I record it as usual. As you'll see, says the LinkedIn AI/NPC. I like NPC. I think we should start calling them NPCs. I like that. Didn't get the current thing update. Yeah. Although I don't think I think you're wrong there, because I think the Fauci paper isn't the current thing. I think everybody's just ignored it. The current thing still is. That's the thing. Like vaccines still do this thing, which they clearly don't do, which we've known since the 60s. So the current thing's always been that, and everybody's just ignoring it. Anyway, so the person that probably looked at this apparently agreed, because I got an email like, this post deleted. At which point I wrote to Twitch. I'm broadcasting live on Twitch, so I got Twitch on. I wrote to LinkedIn's press. I've written to Twitch's press contact a few times as well, but they do answer that. LinkedIn didn't, but we'll talk about that later. Anyway, let's leave it there, okay? So I was giving them the benefit of the doubt. Now, after this, going through some machine learning algorithm and me actually clicking the let's request a second look button, it probably went to some cube farm, right? There's some cubicle farm, probably in Bangladesh, or it used to be in Ukraine. I don't think they're in Ukraine anymore. Maybe in India, with some guy. I don't want to blame the guy. The guy is I'm sure he or she is underpaid, definitely underqualified. Like, they can't fucking tell. How would they be able? They couldn't even tell that this is like a journal. They probably, I give them the benefit of the doubt. They might have clicked on the link and then they went to the private citizen press, right? The .press could have been an idea. I mean, that doesn't mean I am, well, it kind of means that I am press, because being the press is just identifying with being the press, right? It's not a protected term. If you want to call yourself a journalist, you're a journalist. It means you at least try to, or want to give the impression to adhere to a certain ethos. So that would have been a point. But they probably went there and then saw the podcast album art, which is me in a leather jacket with sunglasses holding over under shotgun. And they probably went, oh, this is some kind of nut job. Some kind of white supremacist nut job is probably what people think. Which is kind of why I have that. It's kind of self-selecting. I really like that cover art image. It's, the people that are turned off by that, I don't want to have them listening to the show, because as I mentioned many times, this is a show that's about you thinking for yourself, right? And if this kind of thing turns you off, you're not in the right mindset to listen to this. So that's all good. But anyway, that person probably, how can they tell? They probably barely speak English. They don't know how to read a scientific paper. They didn't go to read the paper. They might know who Dr. Fauci is, but they have no fucking idea. So I don't want to blame that person, right? I might blame the AI, because AI's machine learning is shit, and you can't hurt anybody's feeling there. So, fuck the AI. But let's think about what this means. Right? I think I was trying to be relatively, if you listen to the episode, I think I was factual. I mean, as I always do, I kind of editorialize, I give some personal feelings, but I read the paper. I stuck to the facts in the paper. I checked out quite a few of the references in the paper. I checked out the people who wrote the paper. I looked at the place where it was published. I looked at what I could tell of the peer review process, and it all seems to me like solid scientific evidence. Well, as it's a review paper. It seems to me to be based in the current scientific consensus about vaccines. Granted, it kind of reinforces what I always thought, but I've always thought that because I did some research. It's not like I'm like just made up my mind, This was the very first thing I did, like in March of 2020 or April, when people say, okay, we didn't have a vaccine yet, but like we need to get people vaccinated. It's our only chance against this disease. I did some research and I went, what kind of diseases have we actually, like, do vaccines actually inhibit the spread of diseases? Like, what kind of diseases have we actually extinguished? And, started figuring out, well, they do in some cases, smallpox. But like, as I said last episode, big factor. There's also like quarantining people and stuff. And, so my kind of belief, if you want to call it, on this was based on like research that I'd done. So this kind of made sense to me, but like also checking it critically, it made sense. And even like surprising to me, because obviously I haven't been a big fan of Fauci. Like I didn't like his policies, and I didn't like a lot of the stuff he'd said previously. So the more surprising it was to me that, he wrote this now. But like, let's like, I think I was pretty even keeled about the whole thing, and I presented the paper in a critical journalistic way. Okay, it's a podcast, it's not a written medium, new media, new rules, which is my tagline. So I'm doing it in a different way, because where I'm coming from. I've talked about this a lot. My biases. So I also editorialize, and I'll tell you my opinion. I think that is part of this process, and I think part of journalism today. But this is a journalistic product. And I was referencing a paper written by one of the preeminent scientists in the field, who was so preeminent that he basically shaped the policy, the very policy towards this disease, the very public policy by which LinkedIn has this fucking terms of service that now says, that we gotta, prevent misinformation, whatever they want to call it, probably goes back to a large extent to Dr. Anthony Fauci, which makes this so ridiculous. And if it wasn't that sad, it would actually be kind of funny. But like, what we have here is basically LinkedIn saying that this paper that one of the preeminent scientists in the field, the former advisor to the US president, has written in one of the most prestigious journals for this field, which was peer-reviewed, and is written by his colleagues of the government agency that is responsible for fighting these kind of diseases with vaccines. So they're writing about the field. They're all preeminent experts previously advising the president. And they're saying that this is misinformation? Like, seriously, what the fuck? I mean, I know how this came about. I'm very, very sure this is a machine learning algorithm that just picked up on some stuff. And because machine learning is like statistics, right? It can't understand. I mean, people think this. They think AI is intelligent, but it fucking isn't. We talked about this on the show. It's just statistics. It just picks up word. It can't understand the language. So it doesn't understand. It never understood the podcast. It wasn't listening to the podcast. That's a thing. AI podcast censorship, something we're going to talk about. There's another episode I've got on the long list of things I'm going to have to go to at some point, get to at some point. But like, okay, this is the fucking AI not understanding the text of the show notes. Going, this is weird. We're going to delete this. Because that's the policies we have now. We have some shitty algorithm that can't understand language, arbitrarily deciding on a very, 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 very specific and complicated topic that this is misinformation. And then you have probably some guy who doesn't know how to read papers. I mean, how can somebody who's sitting in some cubicle or something educate on this kind of thing? They don't fucking know. They're not an expert in the field. They probably don't even know how to read a scientific paper because, they have to look at all kinds of shit all day. They're underpaid. Like, what kind of a process is this? This is like broken. This is fundamentally broken. So the whole decision they came to is idiotic. It's like even suggesting that this paper in a very highly regarded journal by Dr. fucking Anthony Fauci is misinformation is... Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at any point. Now, that's one thing. If LinkedIn was just like a random social network, if LinkedIn was Twitter, this was one thing. But we now are going to have to talk about what this means for LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is just not a social network, right? So I must say, I have to admit, I'm jaded and cynical as fuck about technology topics, about, at this point, privacy, about censorship. You know, I expect the worst. So I'd fully would have expected this episode to be deleted from YouTube or Twitch, which it wasn't. I don't know if I'd expected it to be deleted off Twitter now with some changes that Musk has made. I don't know. But I would not have expected it to be deleted off LinkedIn. Why? Because, you know, LinkedIn is not a normal it's not a social network like other social networks. It's marketed and branded as a professional network for professional people. So for professionals to, you know, share what they're working on within their peer group. So what happens if I'm not some random freelance journalist fab dude? What happens if I'm a cell biologist? What happens if I'm I'm working in the medical field? What happens if I work on mRNA vaccines, let's say? You know, I'm Dr. Fabian Scherschel. You know, let's pretend I actually finished university. And I actually did something with my life, and I became a scientist. I'm working on vaccines, and I'm like, oh, wow, look at this review of the scientific consensus that, you know, Dr. Anthony Fauci, of all people, has published. And I share that on LinkedIn. Because it's relevant to me, you know, my peer group. Now, if that same thing would have happened, how can anybody take LinkedIn seriously, you know, when they delete that at that point? Especially, like, you know, this is like every time I go on LinkedIn, they kind of try to talk me into a subscription, and they kind of want my money, right? So because, you know, professional, whatever. And then something like this happens, which makes the whole the thing laughable. Now, granted, I'm pretty sure this wouldn't have happened if I just posted the link of the paper. You know, if I just posted my comment and then link to the paper, maybe that wouldn't have happened. I don't know. I don't know how the AI algorithm decides. Maybe then the guy at the second level of, you know, appealing it would have said, well, this is obviously fine. It's cell host microbe, you know, they look at the source. And like with my podcast, they just didn't click through. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how they decide these things, which is part of the problem. But do you think, okay, that is, you know, it's okay. It's just like some weird guy, just a freelance journalist, in air quote, linking to his weird podcast, right? But like, in some respect, this makes it even worse. And if I could have written a message to LinkedIn like I did to YouTube, I would have explained to them what I explained to YouTube. Look, I'm the press. You might not like this, but I'm the press, which I am by dint of just saying I'm the press. That's how it works. You know, I'm in Germany, and here in Germany, and, you know, it might be different in your country. It's not different in any country I've ever worked in as the press, which is the UK. But, you know, but in other countries, I know it's not different in Australia. I know it's the same in the US. you're the press when you say you're the press. And in Germany, there's a special, because the Pressekodex, there's a kind of like a self-governing rule set that you adhere to if you're the press. And if you do, you're kind of protected from being sued in certain cases and stuff like that. And I do that. But that's how it works. Now I'm part of the press. Now, that means I'm protected under the Constitution over here. And in the US, it would be much the same. So LinkedIn can't say, well, it's different in the US. No, it's the same in the US. There are laws and rules and policy in place to protect press freedom, which means that if somebody says they're the press and they're producing a product that they say is journalistic, and it's demonstrably journalistic, like you could go I'd be very happy if this went to court. Like I'd go to any court and have them listen to the podcast episode and go, there's editorializing in there, but it's I think this adheres to being a journalistic product. It's well researched. It's based on the on the source material. I'm making clear when I'm editorializing. I don't think I'm out of line where I'm editorializing. I think it's all well based in the matter that's in the evidence that's before us. So what you're doing, if you're deleting that, is you're actually endangering very specifically freedom of the press. Actually, I think under German law, what you're doing might actually be illegal. It doesn't matter that your terms of service say, well, medical, your terms of service could very well say we delete what we want and we're a private company. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. You can't, you're not allowed to do that. If you need a reason for that, right? And if your reason is, well, we just don't like what the press is writing or saying on a podcast, then I want to see you get that through a court. That'll be interesting. So the judge in Germany would probably ask you in court, go, okay, so you're running this company, and you're telling us, okay, so you let people post any kind of information on there. And then if the press says something that you don't like, because maybe they say something negative about your company, which is true, but you don't like it, you just delete it. And you think that's okay. Yeah, I don't think that's going to fly. Now, YouTube kind of understood that, I think. I don't know why they reinstated that one episode, but they kind of did so. I don't think LinkedIn understand that. Of course, I did tell them. Maybe we can come to that. I wrote to them a nice email, not strongly worded. I said, look, you deleted this episode. I appealed. You struck down the appeal. I don't think you understand what's going on here. This might have been a mistake. This is, linked to my episode. This is what I did. I think this is a journalistic product. Could you explain to me how you arrived at the decision that me accurately portraying what Dr. Fauci says in this paper is misinformation? Like, what specifically is this ruling of misinformation based on? I think I know what they thought. They were like, well, this guy says vaccines don't work, and this extent that must be misinformation. But it's not. I'm sorry, it's just clearly not. It's I hesitated to call it the truth because that's stupid, but it's based in what the foremost experts in the field of science, TM, know at this time, as very eloquently written down by one of the foremost experts. So, yeah, they didn't answer, of course. In this case, I didn't expect them to answer because LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft Never does. I've been in this, I've been an IT journalist for over 10 years now. And in many cases, I've had to contact Microsoft. And they only answer you if you ask them for like, why is this product great? That you get an answer. If you tell them, look, we have I'm telling you this because I have an IT security researcher who's found a serious problem in one of your applications. Please, would you get in contact about this and tell me if you know about this problem? They very quickly, like, if it's web related, often you can tell, they very quickly fix the security vulnerability on their side, which is why you always make sure you've documented it, little inside knowledge here if you ever want to do something like this. If you want to become a journalist, little inside knowledge, you document the security vulnerability before you tell the company. Because, it takes them, like, Microsoft's very quick with this shit. Like, it takes them like half an hour to like close the security vulnerability, but they never answer the email. Like, the best I ever got was like some Microsoft. At some point, actually, I had some very good relations to a person that worked in PR in Microsoft Germany, but they always go, yeah, I'm going to get the, I can't tell you anything because we're not allowed to tell you anything, like the German people. I'm going to get the American press people to tell you about it, and then they never get back to you. And then I wrote too many stories, and then they didn't like me that much, and they didn't answer anymore. So LinkedIn didn't answer in this case either. Which is not surprising to me. But I think, which means, the only way we can take this is that they know that they're fucked up. That even if they, spent the time and looked at the case, they can only come to the solution, well, this guy actually, if they actually listen to the fucking podcast, this guy actually didn't spread misinformation. He didn't mischaracterize this paper. That's actually what that paper says. It's by one of the foremost experts in the field. It summarizes very well documented scientific, a very well documented scientific consensus with good references that you can follow up and that you can check, and then you will, for all intents and purposes, figure out that Fauci, surprise, Fauci didn't fucking make this up. It actually is the scientific consensus. And then you can only come to the conclusion that this is all correct. And like, I can't, like, on the bare minimum, I can't take LinkedIn seriously, because how can you be like a scientist now on LinkedIn and use it for your own, for your professional connections when you can't even post links or talk about the actual scientific consensus on the topic? If it, even if it clashes with something that LinkedIn thinks or that terms of service say is the scientific consensus, I've got news for you. There's probably not there's not a one person working at LinkedIn or at fucking Microsoft who's an expert on this field, actually, who knows, right? I'm very certain that anybody at LinkedIn who looked at this as a result of me actually poking them on it, via the, let's take a second look, or while writing an email to the press, I'm very certain that none of these people understand the matter as well as I do. And I'm not saying that because I'm very intelligent or did a lot of research. I just did some research. There might be more intelligent people working there, but they just didn't fucking spend the time. I'm willing to bet they didn't even put the time in to read this paper, which isn't that long. So I'm actually one of the reasons why I keep doing this episode, when something like this happens, is I fucking had it. I fucking had it with these fucking idiots. These are people who think they know and we're going to talk about this. I'm going to have more episodes on this. I really want to talk about this like in a philosophical way at some point. Right now I'm just angry. angry at these fucking morons who think they know the truth. They think there's an objective truth in the universe. They think on a topic like, vaccines do this or that. There's like an objective fact, an objective truth you can arrive at. And that they know it. And they don't even fucking put the work in to read. I don't know how long this paper is, 17 pages or whatever. It took me like 2 hours to work through it. And I read really slowly when I do stuff like this. And I check stuff. I'm not the fastest person to do this stuff. Anybody who's like an actual scientist, like my wife who does this for a living, we've checked this paper out in half an hour or something, read through it really fast. I was really slow because I don't understand many of the words, and then I have to cross-reference them and look them up and see what this means and check all of this shit. So it took me like 2 or 3 hours. But I put in these 2 or 3 hours. And these fucking people who think in German we say, die Wahrheit gepachtet, They think they own the truth. They know what's right in the universe. They know, and, they want to, for the better of the planet and mankind, they know what to do. These fucking idiots, they know nothing. They're fucking Jon Snow, and they're too fucking lazy to even read the paper. And I've had it with these people. I don't give a fuck what your terms of service say. You can stick your terms of service up your fucking ass. And if you want to delete my account because I said that, please do. I mean, what the how can you take this? How can you take them serious? Like, not only as a professional social network for professionals, but also you're fucking basically this kind of what you're doing is basically the same kind of thing. What you're doing to me, I'm just a small podcaster. Who the fuck cares about me? I don't have the illusion that anybody cares about me. But like, what they do to me, they do to other people as well. What they do to me, they do to the New York Post. This is the same fucking thing as the Hunter Biden laptop story. You're suppressing legitimate news, legitimate information, calling it misinformation on no basis in reality at all. And it's happening all over. I mean, another episode we probably have to do at some point is on the lab theory, right? I mean, I said this in the beginning as well. I was like, so herpy derpy internet research idiot at home, sitting there in his pajamas, goes, "Hey, this virus outbreak. Where is it? It's in Wuhan. Okay, so it came from a bat at this wet market, and you go like, oh look, there's like what, 10 BSL 5 labs, biosafety level 5. They're the kind of labs where they work on really dangerous viruses. There's like 10, 15 labs on the whole planet, and one's in Wuhan, China, and it's like really close to this wet market where apparently the virus came to the human race because somebody ate a bat. Now, let me look at that. Oh, they do research on coronaviruses in this lab. Well, wouldn't you know, this is a coronavirus, It's not even a fucking conspiracy theory if you go, it's mighty strange that this virus breaks out in it's like, you said that, and then you were the worst conspiracy theorist. It was bullshit. You were like, you were called an idiot. I remember what people like, you're fucking crazy. I'm like, when the Marburg virus broke out in Marburg, when people got Ebola, and it turned out, well, they had an accident at the lab in the same city. Well, it's not Ebola technically. It's a Marburg virus. Ebola is a Marburg anyway. But, it's like if somebody back then would have said, well, no, it didn't come from that lab. It came from a dog. Right? You're like, well, funny. There's this city and the university, and they have this lab, and they're researching this virus that's like hemorrhagic fever, right? So you get it and then you start coughing blood and you die. And now there's people in the street coughing blood and they die. Oh, no, they got that from some random bat that flew by. Or like the Reston outbreak. No, it's just Reston, Virginia. This is just where the virus happened to be. It's got nothing to do with the government lab that's just next door. So from the beginning, I was like, we don't know that it's from the lab, but it's a credible theory, right? And in the very beginning, like I remember, like half a year after the pandemic got started, there were like this, Trump actually released the stuff from the CIA, where the CIA had actually, the CIA had a theory that it was a lab leak because they noticed some weeks before it got public that the virus broke out. I think in November of 2019, they on satellite images they saw like traffic. They had like shut down the traffic around where the lab is, and the CIA is like, that's weird. And there was like nobody working at the lab. You could tell like from the heat or whatever, like they had basically shut the lab down. They were like, this kind of could be indications of like a lab leak. And then the whole press for like years goes, no, that's a stupid conspiracy theory. If you even say that, if you even call it the Chinese virus, you're like a crazy right-wing fucking Trump Nazi. And well, it turns out apparently, yeah, we all thought that, including the FBI, who apparently thought this for months or years or whatever. And then they just go on the television and say, we all know, didn't we, Brad? I'm at lost. It fucking just makes me angry. It is it doesn't make me angry that they fucking try this shit, right? That the government tries to hide this shit, that the press goes along with it. That's just the way it works. It makes me angry that people actually fall for it, right? Every intelligent person, I talked about this privately in 2020 and said, this might as well be from a lab. They were like, yeah, that's a credible theory. Right? And then you say that publicly and everybody goes, crazy. How could you arrive at such an outrageous possibility? Oh my God. Anyway, this was terribly self-indulgent. I apologize for that, but I think it's okay. So why I think this is important? It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that LinkedIn is as shitty as every other social network, but kind of surprised me that they didn't even fess up to it. To be honest, I mean, if even YouTube did that, but. I think it's important to talk about this stuff because I think this happens to a lot of people. I think a lot of people post something like this and then it just gets disappeared like this. And then they never object and they kind of self-correct. And I think the press does as well. Right? I don't know. If I'd written this as a story for a large news organization, like, and would their post have been deleted? Are they like on a whitelist? So it's okay if they spread air quotes misinformation. If they don't, they would probably self-censor. The next time they would probably go, let's not do that. They'll just delete our LinkedIn account or whatever. I mean, it's not only LinkedIn, right? This happens everywhere. It's shit. It's a horrible situation. So we've got like some machine learning algorithms, some people who don't know what they're doing, trying to arbitrate the truth because the terms of service of the social network say that, on this topic, You may only post the approved truth. And we're sorry, you haven't run the update yet, so Dr. Fauci is not part of the truth. I'll have to do some more episodes on this. This whole complex topic. I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I've been labeling this in my brain just as the Ministry of Truth. That's what I think is happening here. I think that's what people in the government, in several governments, in my government in Germany, I think in the US, but also in private corporations kind of want to establish. That's what this is. Right? And I never liked it, but it was kind of manageable when they said, okay, we're going to delete everything that is against WHO guidance. Because that's the same threat to freedom of press and freedom of speech and everything. But that was at least manageable. But now it's just like, oh, this is, LinkedIn doesn't even pretend. They're just like, if you read the terms of service, it doesn't mention, none of this applies. None of the shit they link to applies to what I did. Because it's not misinformation. And everything, like the way they, in their terms of service and in their policy, define misinformation is it goes against some guidance by the WHO, or interestingly against the National Institute of Health, and this all doesn't apply. But who cares? The algorithm, the computer says no, and then you can't do anything about it. Yeah. I would say it kind of dismays me that like a private corporation can do this kind of thing, and the government, wherever you are in the US or in Germany, doesn't do anything about it. But I kind of feel like that's per design. I kind of feel like the government has outsourced, because, for example, in Germany, I talked about this on the show previously, the constitution says there is no censorship, which means there is no censorship of the speech of the citizen by the state, right? And they kind of got around to that by just having the censorship being done by private corporations who own all the platforms where the speech is happening. So now you can't call on the constitution because it's not the government doing it. But I mean, it's the same fact, right? And I really don't understand why that doesn't get fixed, because I'm naive sometimes. I'm sometimes very naive and very idealistic, and I studied, history and politics, and in politics they taught me, well, there's the law, and then there's commentary on the law, like on the Constitution, and that kind of tells you how it's interpreted. And I know it's always been interpreted by that, but I can't understand. If you, in Germany we call them Rechtspfleger, so the caretakers of the law, which is judges, attorneys, people in the legal profession. They're all, you can actually you're debarred in Germany if you do anything as an attorney that is against this taking care of the law. If you're actively subverting the law, then you can get debarred. And so all of that is about not following the letter of the law, right? But trying to understand what the law is there for. Yeah, if you're an attorney and you're trying to defend your client, you bend the law as you can. But as a judge and as a politician who cares about these things, it is inconceivable to me how you can be of the opinion that we created a constitution that prevents the state from censoring its citizens, and then if you move the public discourse to a private arena, it's okay if private companies do that because the outcome is the same, right? The citizen is silenced. And that's what this no censorship provision paragraph in the Constitution is there for. Right? It's there to prevent private citizens from being silenced or the press from being silenced. So if I write an article that says, look, Fauci said, the preeminent expert from the US said this thing we told the population for 3 years about vaccines is not true, and it was never true. If the state would go and delete that, everybody would cry out and go, the state can't censor the press. No, the press uses a private platform by another actor to get this news to the populace, and then it's deleted, then it's okay. Why? Like how? How does anybody who tries to understand what the law is there to do and tries to defend that just okay with that? I just don't get it. I do not understand this. And it's the same in the US. Like how was deleting the Hunter Biden story off Twitter okay in any, like why? Like, why is there all this, like, free speech, freedom of the... Like, the whole country was founded on free speech and freedom of the press, right? But because, it's a product of the French Revolution, where before the French Revolution, there were kings, right? And the king would say, this is the truth. And then if any citizen, the press, would say, no, the king is wrong, the king could go off with the heads. It was the French Revolution, and everybody went to the US, and then they decided, hey, let's found a country on the belief that citizens make the rules. And there's no king that's always right, and let's enshrine that in law. So back in the day, it was religion because the king would say, you're all Catholic now, and whatever, or you're all Protestant, and we didn't like that. But you build a whole country on that, whose whole purpose is that, to have, to build policy, to build the democratic edifice of the state on the backs of people being allowed to say what they think. And because in the day, it was always the king or the government preventing the people from saying what they felt was wrong with the situation. You write the laws that way, right? That's why then you build a state and you don't have a king, and you go, okay, but we kind of need the same protection, so we're going to say that the state can't do this. Like the state can't do what the king used to do. Yeah, and then you do that, you build that, and you build a few hundred years come along, and then it's like, okay, now the power rests to a large extent in the hand of some, it's a government still, but also corporations. But now the corporations can do that. And the government just gets the like, why isn't anybody waking up to this? I don't get it. Like, I can't. It's kind of a little bit understandable in Germany, where we do have this like very clear, we have freedom of speech and freedom of the press, but then they're very clear rules, like Nazi propaganda, freedom of the press is out, freedom of speech is out, it's illegal, you're going to jail, right? So we do have a strict rule set, but in the US they don't even have that, like freedom of speech is paramount, and this shit is coming from the US. This is US companies doing this shit. Yeah, anyway. You can't take LinkedIn seriously anymore, I think. It's fucking Microsoft. So it's always fucking Microsoft. But it's not really LinkedIn. I mean, this is the general problem I feel is with society believing that that something is true, provably true, that you can say this is the truth, and then you make rules based on that. And that bites you in the ass to a large extent when what you say, like, it bites you in the ass when let's say you don't know, like we did with a lot of things with COVID and SARS-CoV-2, and then it turns out later that something else is true, and then it takes some time to catch up, right? And so you have all these totalitarian rules based on the truth that isn't the truth anymore, and it kind of takes a while to disassemble that. It's even worse when what you said was the truth was never the truth to begin with, as Fauci says here. Should have known this shit since the 60s. Nobody was listening to the people who actually knew what they said, or the stupid podcasters who did like a day of research and kind of figured it out as well. So it's bad enough to build like this totalitarian society on the mistaken belief that there's at any given point a truth you can come down to, right? Which I've discussed on the show. We did episodes on the scientific method, on why effect is an effect. We know there's gravity. I can hold up a pen and then drop it and it goes down. That's gravity. Fact. But like, what is gravity? How does it work? Like folding space-time. When you get down to that, it's fucking theory that you can't fucking prove, right? Why does it do these things? And then if you go, like, why does gravity behave this way? And then you approach light speed and it behaves differently. Why does it do these things in a black hole that actually aren't possible in the observable universe? Like, it's not fun. You can't come down to a given fact at any given moment, and to believe that is bad enough. And to structure your society around this mistaken belief, because everybody goes science, 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 science. Nobody actually understands the scientific method. That's bad enough. But if you then do that based on being wrong from the beginning, we're fucked. Anyway, maybe that's it. That's it for this part of the show. Let's move on. The bottom line. The bottom line is we're fucked. So with that, let's move on to the feedback part of the episode. So if you, I always say this and I mean it, I appreciate your feedback very much. So if you have other thoughts, have other feelings about what I've just told you for an hour and 10 minutes, if you think I'm wrong, please tell me. If you think these kind of episodes are too self-indulgent and I should rather talk about Nord Stream now, let me know. I want to know. You can tell me. I can take it. Believe me, I can take it. Let me know. I'm pretty vicious sometimes against some people, like these dumb fucks at LinkedIn. And I only do that because I can take it when it comes back like that. So if they write me back and go like, yeah, you're the dumb fuck, I can take that. And I can take it from you as well. So please let me know. Get in contact. privatecitizen.press. All the details are on the website. There's in every show notes, there's a producer feedback section. There's a handy table of contents on the newly redesigned, well, not that new anymore, but on the redesigned website that you can click on and you get right to it, or you can click on contact in the top bar and you also get some information. Anyway, speaking about feedback, I am a little bit ashamed to say that I am somewhat behind on my email in certain respects because I've been very busy, so some shit's been piling up. and there's some stuff I've earmarked to talk about on the show, which I've then forgotten in a pile of rancid email that got poured on top of it. And one of these emails is from longtime listener and very astute producer of the show, writes in a lot, and I always appreciate his feedback. Fadi Mansour, who is commenting in this email that is over a month old at this point. I'm sorry about this, Fadi. On episode 142, where I just come back from a trip to Dubai, where I attended a Syrian wedding. And I kind of had expected Fadi to write in, because I know Fadi has some Syrian roots. And so I appreciate his feedback here. So let's get to it. Fadi says, I will start with the not so serious topic. You mentioned a lot of dancing at the wedding. I think you probably meant traditional dancing where they form a line. This is called dabke. Dabke? I was never a fan, but people are usually very enthusiastic about it. I hope you enjoyed it. No, I meant dancing per se. There was a lot of dancing. Most of the dancing was to quite modern, I would say Western music. Just a hell of a lot of dancing. Which, I would actually, traditionally, I'm not that much of a fan of dancing. I mean, I do dance sometimes, but I did at this wedding. This dabke stuff sounds like it's more down my alley, because, I spent a lot of time in Australia, and in rural Australia, in some hick town called Gympie. If you're from Australia, you're like, how the fuck did you end up there? That's always the question. Like, did you get shot when you were there? No, I didn't get shot. I did shoot a squirrel by accident, only with a 22, but I don't think the squirrel survived. So I did a lot of line dancing there, which this sounds kind of like the same thing, where you like line up and then you dance towards each other, and you twirl around and you do all the shit. I kind of like that. Upside of that is you can also do it in cowboy boots, which I think is always good. But no, there was just a lot of dancing of all kinds. There was a lot of traditional Syrian songs. There was like this singer who was on stage for like an hour, or almost an hour and a half, who was in the middle of the dancers, who was singing like some traditional songs by the end of it. And there were some older men who apparently requested some traditional Syrian songs, which basically got them tearing up, which was kind of interesting. Very emotional. They got their handkerchiefs out and were waving them around at some point. It was a very interesting experience, I must say. I like this kind of stuff. I like to, push your boundaries once in a while. I'm almost 40 now, but I still think, getting yourself out there and experiencing things that you haven't experienced before, makes you think. Keeps you in the world, and gave me all these things, which is thoughts and ideas, which I talked about in this episode, which is the next thing we're going to get to here now, because Fadi continues on a more serious note. Let me just take a sip of beer here. On a more serious note, in this episode, you talked about the willingness of people in Dubai. I hope I say this correct. I think they say Dubai in Arabic. I think that's kind of how, I was listening very intently to the metro station announcement. I think it's Dubai, to give up freedoms in exchange for comfort or luxury. Here I would like to make a distinction between foreigners living or visiting there and a local population. Although having never been there, my points of view are coming from familiarity with the kinds of governments in the area. For local citizens, their freedoms are already limited. Governments already encroach upon personal freedoms, so people have already given up on that. So what you see as concession are already part of the deal of living there. What is at stake is their life and freedom. And I think you hit on that correctly, even if you've never been there. But I think you're spot on. And I think you misunderstood me, or maybe I wasn't clear in the episode. I was specifically talking, of course, I interacted there a lot with like non-locals, right? So I was like in a hotel, and you could actually, drink alcohol at the bar and stuff. And the bar staff or the hotel staff, there were like girls that, I think I said that on the episode, that seemed to me, they could have actually worked in my local cafe in Wimbledon down the road when I was living there. They sounded exact. They had like that exact, East London, West London, West is on that side, West London accent, and. Yeah, I was talking about the people living there, giving up this, somebody from the UK or somewhere else in Europe coming there and giving up the freedom, which was very hard for me, like the simple freedom of being able to touch my wife in public, which is, I never noticed how much I do that until, I wasn't allowed to. That was just like, that made a huge impression on me, which is why I think it's important, to go to different places and experience this kind of thing. And I was very much not talking about the local people. I like a typical visitor who's in Dubai for a week. I didn't have much contact with local people, and especially as the wedding. I mean, lots of these people living in Dubai, but they were like Syrian people originally from Syria, and lots of people also moved to other countries like Germany, which is why we know part of the family. So yeah, they're not the local people. So I think your point is correct. And Fadi continues. On the other hand, for foreigners from more democratic countries, this is different. They would not be worried about the personal security. Well, they kind of are, right? That's why I'm not touching my wife, because I don't want to get thrown into jail down there. But the trouble from my point of view, and I think you would agree here, is that giving up these freedoms now, although the effects are still not very apparent, bringing these more democratic countries to the same level of balance of power as these less democratic ones. Governments and corporations have much more control over individuals, and this is what makes me worried. Unfortunately, we are living in interesting times. And I would agree with that, Fadi. Yeah, that was kind of my point. My point was, maybe I didn't make it clear enough, and maybe I'm just reflecting on this now because Fadi wrote in, which is why I, appreciate feedback so much. Because it sharpens. We talk about these things, and it sharpens our thoughts towards things, right? It makes things clearer. I think the impression that I specifically had was people from more democratic Western countries moving there for, earning money, having have a very comfortable life there. It's a nice place to live in some respects, but you're giving up a lot of freedom and like the willingness of people to do that. And the contrast of, for example, here, in these more Western countries, few years before, the willingness of people giving up their freedoms for a promise of, protecting the healthcare system or something like that, some promise to be safer, basically. That's how it always works. And it doesn't really matter how preposterous it is. Like in Nazi Germany, whether the imagined danger wasn't actually a danger at all. There was the thing with the communists that was Germany, turning into communism was a danger at some point, and I can actually understand people being afraid of that at the time. But I'm talking more about like the racist, xenophobic, like the Jews are the evil in the world, which is bullshit like that. It doesn't really matter how real it is, because for me, the threat of SARS-CoV-2 wasn't a threat, because I was looking at the statistics and it was like my chances of dying of this are minute, and if I do, then I'd just die of something else, right? And that's my grandma, who's at the time was like 98 or whatever. It's like, she there's a significant threat there, but there's also a significant threat with just gastroenteritis or with just heart disease or whatever, some random germ coming along killing her. So to me, that threat wasn't real. So it doesn't really matter how real the threat is, but people are, if they believe in the threat, or if they believe in the promise of, in this case, I guess moving to Dubai, it wouldn't be a threat. It would be, the promise of a good life. How willingly most people give up their freedoms. Like, I was just thinking, you couldn't. It's a nice country. I like hot countries. It's beautiful. Like, I like deserts. I like skyscrapers. It's amazing. It's like skyscrapers in the desert. It'd be cool. I love the place. There's a beach, the lovely beaches. It's cool. I could, from just looking at the country, I could very well imagine me living there. But you just couldn't pay me enough money personally. You couldn't, it wouldn't matter. Literally, it wouldn't matter. Like, I'd be a millionaire down there, right? Have a boat or whatever, have cars, do whatever I want. The fact that I just, if I go out, I just can't, be affectionate to my wife would be to me, I'm a person where that just nags me so much that I could never go for this deal. But being down there, I realized how I'm part of a very big minority. Right? I think most people are very happy to go for have their freedoms degraded in certain ways if they're just made safe and rich and comfortable. And that is it's scary to see that, because it work here as well, right? So that means that you just need a threat that enough people go for, say a virus or global warming. And then basically, as somebody in charge, you can get these people to give up a hell of a lot of their freedoms. If you just kind of make things all right. And if you take something like global warming, you'd say, well, but they can't make it all right. But the thing is, if it's actually not that dangerous as people think it is, then actually didn't have to do anything, right? And they could, you could get people to give up a hell of a lot of, and we're doing that, we're doing that in the EU right now. The people are giving up a hell of a lot of freedoms that they used to take for granted a generation ago. Having a car and driving it wherever they want to be. Where that's something I mean, there were always these restrictions, but if you look at the generation of my parents, to prevent them, let's say in the 70s and 80s, to prevent them from driving their car inside of Germany wherever they wanted to, you'd have to have the threat of hardcore terrorism, right? The RAF, the Red Army faction, right? That's when they put police on the street with MP5s and go you can't drive here. And now it's just the temperature is rising a bit. I'm sorry to say that way, but that's what people go for now, and they basically accept the strain. Used to go from blowing up buildings and hard calibers flying around to just okay, it's a bit warmer now. You can't drive your car down there. It's it's interesting times for sure. Let me know what you think about that. Maybe you have some reflections on the feedback section. That's also nice. We also had this on the show before, where I had consecutive feedback sections where we were talking about people giving feedback on the feedback. You may do this on the forum as well. We have a forum, forum.fab.industries, but links are also on the site, privatecitizen.press, on the contact page. That's kind of cool because, people have discussions back and forth directly, which works really well. But anyway, let me know. Please write in, say hello. Maybe if you just want to say hello. Hello, I listened to the show. I appreciate that a lot as well. And with that, let me wrap up this show at this point. As you might know, if you have listened to this before, this show is produced under the Value for Value model, as pioneered by the No Agenda podcast, Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak in the morning, fellas. Which means if you contribute, writing in, telling me what episodes you would like to see, providing critique on episodes that I've done, you become a producer. But that's an important way of contributing to the show. But also I need to put money on the table. So there's also another important way that I could do the show without. And that's my Patreon. I just, happened to choose Patreon for this because it just works the best way. So there's a link in the show notes, privatecitizen.press, how you can subscribe to that. It's like a monthly subscription. It helps me out. You can, of course, also subscribe on Twitch, since I've, live stream this on Twitch. If you happen to catch a live show, you can do that. If you have Amazon Prime, you can even do that for free, thanks to the good old Bezos bucks. But the Patreon supporters are the main people that keep the show going. So I want to thank them here specifically, and I gave them producer titles like in Hollywood. Can stole that from No Agenda as well. So I got my showrunner here, Sir Tarrant. He's also No Agenda royalty. That's where the Sir comes from. Then we have executive. Can't speak the English. Executive producers: Butterbeans, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Rizal, Sandman616. Thanks to my supervising producers: 1i11g, Avis, Bennett Piata, Dave IKN, Jackie Plage, Jonathan M. Hitai, Krunkle, Michael Mullen Jensen, Robert Forster, and Tobias Weber. Producers: Andrew Davidson, Astro C, Cam, Captain Eckhead, David Potter, Dirk Didi, Fadi Mansour, Florian Pigosh, Joe Poser, Michael Small, Mika, Mr. Amish, Rick Bragg, and RJ Tracy, and the associate producers: Barry Williams, D. Jonathan, Johan Sonen, Kaisias, Ricky M, Steve Hose, and Vlad. Thanks to all of you. I appreciate it very much. You keep this show on the road. And couldn't do it without you. And I also couldn't do the show without Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk. The show doesn't really have ads. It doesn't have sponsors. But Bytemark, since long before the show existed, has given me 2 servers for free that I use to distribute the podcast audio file. So that's storage and bandwidth, specifically bandwidth. They're very fast servers. They work really well. Never had a problem. And I couldn't do the show without Bytemark. So thanks to Bytemark, I appreciate it very much. They're good people. They're protecting free speech quite literally here. So thank you very much. That's what podcasting is. Having a server that they just can't just deplatform you quickly and easily. And Bytemark's doing that for me, and it's very much appreciated. And with that, I'm winding up the show. There's another show pretty soon if everything goes according to plan. I don't know. Probably going to talk about the Nord Stream thing, but can't promise anything. But I will do my best to get that to you very soon. Until then, The theme song for this show is called Acoustic Roots. I had somebody mention, a colleague of mine and friend says, listen to this show in the gym. I don't know, probably the ranting, giving off some energy there that you can use, I hope. But they said they really like the intro song because it's very chill and and that's kind of what I was going for. That's why I love it. That's why it's been the intro song since the very beginning. Acoustic Roots by Raoul Kabazali. Great song. And then speaking of great songs, I'm going to play us out today. I always pick a different song, courtesy of Epidemic Sound here, to play us out. And this is somebody who's become one of my favorite artists on Epidemic Sound, and of course also follow her on Spotify now. Big Girl, Nashville singer-songwriter, and this is her new single called Can't See My Face in the Crowd No More. So this is Can't See My Face in the Crowd No More by Big Girl. I'll see you soon, and let's all together aim to misbehave. All right. That's why when I've clicked the stop recording button and I've saved this podcast and I've mastered it and released it up to the Bytemark servers, I pushed it out on the RSS feed. I'm going to post it on LinkedIn because over here we aim to misbehave.
We were made for each other to hold on to. I was carved out of redwood beneath your moon. I was birthed in the mountains.
Actually, this was I faded that imperfectly, but I'm going to have to restart it. It's peaking a little bit, but it's a great song. So let's start it again. Really love Big Girl. This is awesome. This song.
We were made for each other to hold on to. I was carved out of redwood beneath your moon. I was birthed in the mountains under the sun. Something's changed. You can't see my face in the crowd no more. Something's changed. You can't see my face in the crowd no more. We are living the dream together out here on the road, and our love takes center stage at every single show. But lately you've been distant, and I don't know what for. Something's changed. You can't see my face in the crowd no more. Something's changed. You can't see my face in the crowd no more. We were made for each other to hold on to. I was carved out of redwood beneath your moon. I was birthed in the mountains under the sun. Something's changed. You can't see my face in the crowd no more. Something's changed. You can't see my face in the crowd no more. Something's changed. You can't see my face in the crowd no more.
God, I love her voice. Such a good voice. Really, really like Big Girl. Anyway, so that's the episode in the can, as they say on Twitch. On Twit. Well, one can confuse that. They, didn't they sue each other at some point? Did Laporte sue Twitch and then settle at some point? I think he did. Speaking of Twitch, let me see if I can rate you somewhere. I have an idea. I think Khalifa is online. Is she playing? Isn't she? God, there's a lot of people streaming. Yeah. There she is. She's you could hear her there for a second. She's playing. Says, oh, maybe her stream is stuck right now. That looks broken. That looks scuffed. Is Jonathan scuffed? Oh, Jonathan's okay. Why's Khalifa scuffed? Oh, maybe it was just me. They're playing Far Cry 6, which is not my game, but I do like Khalifa. So we're gonna raid her now. I'm gonna sign off, and I'm gonna hang out in Khalifa's chat, and then I'm gonna finish this, master this podcast and get it out. Yeah. And then I'm probably gonna go to bed. Gonna have to do some more work tomorrow. Anyway, I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. I'll try to be back tomorrow on Twitch. I'm recording that second episode. I don't know when yet. Please don't nail me down. I've got so much shit to do, but hopefully at some point. Yeah, thanks for watching. I appreciate it a lot. And see you soon, everybody. Wrong hand. See you soon.